Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and clinical psychology, I today wish to talk about unconscious relationships. Now, the layers of our mind or our man, both on the individual and on the group level, on the collective level, just like the many layers of our skin, have been broadly categorized into three categories. Has been broadly categorized into three essential categories: the unconscious, the subconscious or the preconscious, and the conscious, which in the Hindi language have also been called as the achetan man, the ardha chetan man, and the chetan man. And those are not just three levels of our mind or our man, but they are our existential reality as well. They are also the levels through which we exist and experience the world that we live in. And if I can elaborate it through an example, I'd say that if a person A is functioning, is operating, and is living essentially primarily through his or her own subconscious and unconscious, the Ardha Chetan and the Avchetan, through almost every day of his or her life, person B and person C are also operating and experiencing their world, their reality in the similar way. And when there's an interaction between this person A, B, and C, quite naturally their interactions, their exchanges explicitly and or implicitly are also happening primarily through the level of the subconscious and the unconscious, at least 90 to 95% of the times. And in a way, whatever relationship are they creating or are they engaging in, through that interaction or through those interactions, are also quite naturally and logically happening and taking place through the level of their own subconscious and unconscious, Ardha Chetan and Achetan. Mental space, in Hindi also called as manasthiti. And as the researchers from all walks of sciences, be it the conventional sciences or the social sciences, and even philosophy, have been telling us and even are telling us today that our subconscious and our unconscious gets imprinted and impacted the most during the earliest formative years of our lives, during the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of our lives. And quite naturally, these layers of our subconscious and our unconscious mind, i.e., our man, and our existence, do not get informed, formed, impacted, and influenced in isolation. They get informed, formed, impacted, and influenced within our interactions, quite naturally entailing relationships. Because every interaction is about a relationship. So now, since the subconscious and the unconscious is like the photocopy machine, or at least operates and functions like a photocopy machine, wherein once the command has been given, it'll by default print out so many copies if an intervention or an interruption doesn't take place. It works on the repeat mode, and that is why it keeps copying the same print over and over and over and over again. And in a way, just like the photocopy machine, if it has been given the command to print out 10,000 copies or 1,000,000 copies, and if not interrupted and intervened, maybe for hours or for days together, it'll keep churning and printing out and repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again. And quite logically, if it is doing that, the command of which had been given a couple of hours, a few hours, or a few days back, quite logically, quite naturally, it's also telling us that it's repeating and copying the command of the past. Now, whether the past is of a few hours, whether the past is of a few days, or even a few years and decades. But till the time a deliberate intervention, a deliberate interruption takes place, it will keep repeating and churning out the same past or the information of the past command till the time those many number of copies have been printed out. It will do its job automatically, robotically, mechanically. And once again, quite logically, it points towards habits, because every habit is a repetition of the same old, same old, same old, till it becomes a muscle memory wherein it begins to churn out the same automatically without it needing any intervention or interruption. And so at any point in times, which will be many points in our lives, many times in our lives, if we feel that we are repeating the same old, same old, same old interactions and outcomes, we probably need to reflect on the saying by Albert Einstein that if we keep thinking, that if we keep interacting, that if we keep saying, that if we keep repeating the same things over and over and over and over again, but we are expecting different results, well, we should either question our expectations or we should question the commands that we have given or that we have taken up. We should question the interactions and the reactions that are giving us the same outcome, the same output, over and over and over and over and over again. And maybe we've been doing it for decades. So breaking that habit is not going to be easy. Because weirdly and funnily enough, when I had asked a few people, or in fact a lot of people, to take up just a simple exercise of learning and reciting Z or Z2A, barring very few people, a lot of people had resistance to that. For a few asked me as to what advantage will it have? What benefits will it have? Some even told me that we don't have time to waste on faltu stuff, on ridiculous stuff. A few even told me that, wow, you must have had a lot of time to be able to learn C to A. Not a whole lot of us have the luxury of time. And there were a few other feedbacks that I got as well. Now, it wasn't something that was backbreaking. It wasn't something that was humongously challenging. It wasn't something that would have shifted their identity or the idea of their identities. It wasn't also something that would have shifted their relationship equation, at least not immediately. It wasn't something that would have killed them. And yet, 85 to 90 or even more percent of the people had that resistance. And quite naturally, whenever there's resistance, it's resistance to change. It's resistance to the discomfort that any change entails and asks for. Because though a known devil is better, an unknown angel is something that we all need. So if we find ourselves holding resentment, holding grudges within ourselves in keeping with few interactions and thereby relationships, it is something within us that we need to resolve. It is something within us that we need to look into. And unless we look into it, we really cannot resolve it. We really cannot even dissolve it. And to a degree, unknowingly, unconsciously, we might be resenting ourselves for not being able to outgrow our own selves, to outgrow our own habituated, subconscious and unconscious. If we find ourselves shutting down physically, emotionally, and mentally, if we find ourselves not being able to voice our thoughts, our opinions, when we actually need that to happen, if we find ourselves avoiding or running away or wanting to evade, hard, real, honest conversations. If we find ourselves automatically brushing about certain things which have come up once again, quite naturally, quite logically, it's things of the past that have resurfaced again and that we have not looked into and even tried to resolve. If we find ourselves getting unnecessarily aggressive, being hyper reactive or overreactive, and we and others have witnessed and seen the same reactions happening time and time and time again, it's once again the past that is getting reactivated, causing us to react in the same or similar way all over again. If we find ourselves having difficulty saying no when we actually want to say no without having to over explain ourselves, and we end up feeling disappointed in the other person and in ourselves, we find ourselves disappointed in the interactions and the relationships because we either have difficulty saying no, or we feel guilty for saying no, or we end up over explaining. It's once again the past that has come knocking at our door, reactively knocking at our door. If we find it too difficult to trust people, or if we find ourselves trusting people too easily, and we overanalyze it and we overthink it, quite naturally, we are overdoing the overanalysis and the overthinking as well. Quite naturally, quite logically, we are repeating and overcreating the past trust issues as well. And since the subconscious and the unconscious, the ardhachetan and the achetan or the avchetan, is the accumulation of the past memories, of the past experiences, both explicit and implicit. It's the library of all of those memories. Quite naturally, it'll keep repeating itself till it finds a resolution. Till it finds a dissolution. And to give it a more objective understanding, we can take up a couple of examples here to look at it more objectively, to have more insight. So if we take the example of the movies Bhool Bhulaiya 1 and even Bhool Bhulaiya 2, wherein one talked about having dissociative identity disorder and the other talked about past life and how that impacts the present reality, how the past impacts the present. On the underlying, on the implicit level, we'll be able to understand that both of the characters, one played by Vidya Balan and one played by Karthik Aaryan, did not feel heard by their elders, did not feel seen by their elders, and thereby did not feel understood by the elders when they were growing up. They in a way got the message that their reality and their experience and their opinions had no place, had no space within their relationships and within their interactions, which is why the past resurfaces all over again, presents itself all over again to find a resolution. And in one of the movies, it's shown within one lifetime, and in the other movie, it's shown through 2 lifetimes. In a way, clearly telling us that the past does impact our present and our future to a huge degree, because it's all a stack up of memories, i.e., the past, both explicit and implicit. It's the library of the past experiences, of the past memories, that has created and led to our present and somewhere our future as well. Even if we take the example of the movie Dil Dhadakne Do, we'll understand that to a very large degree, the character played by Priyanka Chopra had married her own dad. Of course, that had happened unconsciously. Of course, it was a collective decision that everybody had taken together, that we associate with the familiar, because familiarity is always about the past experiences. Where in the equation, though she is working, she still needs to keep proving to others that she is equally capable, if not more capable, than her brother. We'll also notice that just like her mother, who stuffs down her emotion with food, During one of the scenes which showed Priyanka Chopra and her husband Rahul Bose getting intimate, she is also stuffing down her thoughts, her opinions, and her emotions. And in a way, the character of Priyanka Chopra is repeating what she has seen her mother do. Of course, the face of it just looks different. One does it by food, and one does it through something else. We'll also notice that in both of the relationship equations, the dynamic of Priyanka Chopra's marriage with her husband and of Shefali Shah's marriage with her husband Anil Kapoor is very similar, wherein both the women feel dismissed in their equations, in their interactions. And yet subtly, if we really pay attention, we'll also notice that unknowingly, unconsciously, Priyanka Chopra's mother-in-law and her own mother are very similar. When they in a way both say, "Kya mera beta kanjoos hai?" or her mother telling her, "He provides everything for you. You can buy anything that you want. Is there any need of yours that he is not fulfilling? Is there anything for you that he is not buying?" It can also be noticed on other instances when in a way both of them call her profession, call her business, call her achievements, call her passion as a mere hobby, as a mere shock. And they do not give her the credit for her intelligence, for her hard work, for her discipline, for her perseverance, and for her persistence. And if we can objectively look at it, she gets married or she enters the same familiar relationship, the same interactions, the same reactions that she had experienced while and when she was growing up. And if we can only get conscious, if we can only get aware of these subconscious and unconscious, of these ardhachetan and achetan patterns of the past that are showing up and resurfacing today, we at least get a choice to make a different choice. We at least have the awareness to make a different choice if we wish to. We at least get a choice and a chance to overcome and outdo our own selves. And that at times might look like outgrowing and outdoing the same old, which in a way would make us evolve together, evolve our interactions, or it may also lead us to outgrowing each other as well, outgrowing the same familiar interactions as well. And if we want to have the choice to make a different choice, the first thing is always about becoming aware of our own subconscious and our own unconscious, of our own ardhachetan and achetan, man and existence. Because if we don't do it, we unfortunately have the unrealistic expectation of wanting a different outcome, of wanting a changed outcome, of wanting a changed relationship, of wanting a changed interaction, of wanting to become a different you. Because it doesn't happen if we keep repeating the same old, knowingly or unknowingly, explicitly or implicitly. So it starts with awareness to make different choices, to be able to have different choices even in the first place. And there are two questions when I personally ask myself, when I understand, when I observe that I'm getting into the same old, trying to repeat the same old with the intention of having a different outcome. The first question is, how old do I emotionally feel am I? What is my emotional age when I'm reacting like this? And the second question is, since I'm a mother, would I want my daughter to interact in the same ways, in the similar ways that I interact within? Would I want my daughter to have similar relationships or similar relationships equations that I've had up till now? And if the answer is yes for most things, well, I can keep repeating, objectively listing down as to what I'd like to keep repeating. And if the answer is no for most of the things, well, quite logically, I should be wanting that for myself as well if I would want it for my daughter. So let's try and think about those two questions whenever we find ourselves reacting and interacting in similar ways. Let's try and become aware of those subconscious patterns through these two questions. And I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.